to ask that question himself in person, then that is whoever is chairing, which will be Councillor Jordan of Corporate Scrutiny, to answer and how he would deal with that. But we won't be asking anything that refers to another school at this committee. Do we have a Keith Miller of Brading? Keith Miller of Brading? I'll ask this question though. So I would like to ask the committee, whereas the business case made for the closure of Brading School, the school is in a strong financial position as opposed to the Bay, which is in deficit, and no costings appear to be available regarding the cost of relocating and providing for the children affected.
Chair, again, I think it's more appropriate in the interest of the Cabinet.
No, it says it's locked. Thank you. Do we have a Jen Hughes in the public gallery? Okay. Her question was, whilst I note the mention of 2,348,076 in funding because released back into the school system if the spy school list is closed, this funding merely follows the children it is allocated to and is needed by these children to continue to deliver an education to them, whatever that may be. The estimated deficit savings, 592,326, minus the estimated annual ongoing costs of closing and maintaining the 5 schools, 473,161, equates to an actual year-on saving of 119,165. Given that estimated cost to these schools is 3,030,693, is this process truly financially viable when it will take over 25 years to break even on expenditure versus yearly savings?
Again, Chair, I think it's more appropriate in the interest of the Cabinet on Thursday.
Thank you. Do we have a Hugh Street here? Hugh Street? The question to Corporate Scrutiny is, where reports on all schools on the island compiled before the decision to pay the 6 schools for closure, or were reports compiled on the 6 schools earmarked for closure only after the decision was made to oppose by the officers? And we have nobody here.
There's a very straightforward response, Chair. I suggest you read it out, even though, again, it's probably more appropriate in the interest of Cabinet.
So the response to that is no reports have been withheld. All reports are published other than those restricted, confidential Cabinet papers. Do we have a Kate Benson here? Yes. Thank you. If you press the red button and then ask your question.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You may wish me again, Councillor Brodie, to ask this, but I was hoping that scrutiny would be able to establish whether or not this will happen. Despite considerable concern from councillors over the proposed closure of Brading School at the last Cabinet meeting, Councillor Baker declined to draft an alternative proposal for Brading School on the grounds that a debate and indicative vote would take place at the Emergency Council meeting in January. For various reasons, this debate and vote on the individual schools, including Brading, did not take place at the Council meeting. And I want to know whether or not he intends to put forward the alternative proposal saving the school for a debate and vote at the Cabinet meeting on Thursday.
I think that question's to you, Councillor Bacon.
As things stand, Chair, the proposals and recommendations that have been put forward are contained in the Cabinet paper that I'll put my signature to, which is being presented on Thursday.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question?
I have a comment, if I may, that I'm concerned that those councillors who did express concern and would have potentially voted in a different way had the proposal been put forward have not had an opportunity to vote as they would wish.
And that will be noted. Thank you. I think we have Rob Saunders. Yeah. I would say Saunders, but it is Saunders. From the from the diocese who has a question online.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Sanders, thank you for clarifying that. My question is in respect of the church school proposed closure in the appendices 9, 10 and 12, where justification for their selection needs report references the Local Government Association, which I believe to be a political organisation, which stated that it should be noted that it is the duty of the county to provide good quality education provision for every child within reasonable access, not to provide access to good quality education in a preferred size, type of location, or indeed faith. Rather than perhaps quoting statutory guidance from the DfE document opening and closing maintained schools, which talks about in deciding a proposal to close a school that has been designated with a religious character, decision makers should consider the effect this will have on the balance of denominational provision in the area. So I was wondering why that is the case, and how Cabinet can be confident that other elements of the report have not been selectively included or omitted. Thank you.
Mr Whittaker.
Thank you, Mr Sanders, for your question. So I think I did struggle slightly to hear what you were saying at the beginning, but I think what you're saying is that there's a quote from a Local Government Association report, but there isn't a quote in that section from the statutory guidance. I believe that the quote to the statutory guidance does appear elsewhere in the reports that have been shared, and that has been shared separately as well. So I think it's not a case of it having not been included, it's just that we've included the quote from the Local Government Association in addition.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
Thank you. There appears to be no other public questions. So, as such, I will move to point 5 on the agenda, which is general exceptions, decisions, urgent decisions. Just to let the committee know, there are 2 decisions that will need to be made by Cabinet. They have to come to this meeting just to let you know those decisions will have to be made. And if you're happy for those to be made without full scrutiny. One is the Better Care Fund, which, as you know, is money that goes from, discussed money goes over, and that the Cabinet will agree, so it's money coming to us. That needs to be made as a general exception decision, and there's also purchase of 18 units of temporary accommodation that will be a Cabinet decision that is not on the agenda this evening. Are you all happy that those go under exceptional decisions? Yes? Thank you. Right, we move on to point 6, review of the Cabinet agenda, which is to review the agenda of the meeting of the Cabinet on the 6th of March 2025 and the school place planning. I will hand you over to Councillor Brodie, because Councillor Brodie has a proposal for this committee to discuss.
Thank you, Chair. My proposal is as follows. Corporate Scrutiny Committee notes that it received the circa 1,700-page Cabinet report and appendices on school place planning for its agenda item 6A, just 3 full working days before tonight's committee meeting. Papers for committees are legally supposed to be published at least 5 working days beforehand, with the accompanying publication of background papers being considered to be good practice for effective and meaningful scrutiny. There are also even more pages, circa 2,000 pages in front of me, within the accompanying confidential appendices. Corporate Scrutiny Committee also notes from the Cabinet report, paragraph 2, that, quote, the information has been shared early to allow Cabinet members additional time to read and understand the information ahead of any decision being considered, unquote. Corporate Scrutiny Committee considers that it has been treated shamefully and that any effective and meaningful scrutiny of this momentous decision-making is open to ridicule. Another example of how Cabinet governance is discredited on this Council and why it will be abolished in May. Corporate Scrutiny Committee resolves to urge the Cabinet to postpone decision-making on school places by 2 weeks until the 20th of March, when there is already a scheduled meeting, and resolves to convene a special meeting of Corporate Scrutiny Committee for the 18th of March. This will allow effective and meaningful scrutiny to be undertaken. Should Cabinet not agree to postponement and Corporate Scrutiny Committee agrees to oppose the proposed closure of the 5 named schools on the grounds that no effective or meaningful scrutiny has been facilitated by the Council leadership. As proposed by me, Councillor Jeffrey. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Roddy. I'll second that. I will move to a small discussion on just this proposal to the Corporate Scrutiny Committee.
Chair, could I say something?
Yes.
Chair, I've made the proposal and I'd just like to speak briefly on it. I think this is an absolute nonsense. That is the pile of paper that I have in front of me. It's the best part of 3,500 pages. The purple pages I received last Monday, the white papers I received on Wednesday evening. To expect members of the committee, none of whom are cabinet members, none of whom are full-time councillors, to assimilate and absorb all of that information in that short period of time is an insult both to me, who is an assiduous councillor, and other members of this committee. I urge you to support this. It is important that scrutiny in its last stage, thankfully, is undertaken meaningfully and intelligently, rather than just pay lip service to the process. I hope the members of this committee will support this, and then we can conclude our meeting early this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm quite happy to let you all have a brief say on it, but I think we do have to note that actually 3 working days for anybody, however super absorbent you are of information, is actually possible to do. This is one of the biggest decisions that we have to look into as a corporate scrutiny meeting. And for anybody, officers have months to write this stuff and to look at it. We've had 3 days, and I would not be prepared to discuss this when I haven't been able to read every part of this documentation on something that affects so many children and parents and teachers on this island. So I had to repeat to the committee, I'm not bringing you in yet, Councillor Bacon, however much you put your hand up. So I'll hand to the committee and then we'll move forward to the vote. Councillor Downer and then Councillor Muir.
I'd just like to say...
Microphone, Rodney.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'd just like to say that I would support Councillor Brady's motion. And firstly, I would like to say I'm against the closure of 5 schools. There hasn't been enough time to read the papers. They are far too long and written in language that is meant to bamboozle people. I certainly would have trouble reading through all of them and then understanding all of it. Data and statistics can be manipulated to say anything. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Brodie may have asked this question, but just to make sure I'm clear, what would the impact of this have on this meeting now?
A 2-week delay. So there is a choice. So either the meeting, so their meeting about the devolution stuff is on the 20th after full council. There won't be a scrutiny because we agreed that actually that will be discussed at full council. So there is a meeting. We have checked that this can be brought forward to that meeting on the 20th to give us time to actually read and digest the information. So we haven't checked that. We haven't just come along here and said this is what we're going to do. It will give us time to actually read it and look at it and give proper scrutiny. Or the other decision is that Cabinet on Thursday completely ignores what we've done this evening, if you all agree to do that, and moves ahead with this decision with no scrutiny whatsoever, which will probably be completely unprecedented in this council.
But, sorry, just to be clear, if this passes, this meeting will essentially conclude.
You'd go home.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know you said you weren't, but
I will.
I am interested to hear.
I will,
Okay,
but
brilliant.
you can put his hand down and wait till the committee has gone first. It's excellent, excellent. You're going to have one arm weighing bigger muscle than the other, because I will bring...
I've got some information which assists greatly, I think, microphone.
Councillor Jarman. I'm making you wait.
Thank you, Chair.
I've been working diligently through these. We've had some discussion about them. And I'm very pleased to support Councillor Brodie's motion this evening. I would say that if it passes, although I've not completed going through the papers, I have identified quite a number of errors, some of them mathematical, and I think it would be very beneficial to use the intervening period to meet with one or two, perhaps, of the officers, together with as many of the corporate scrutiny members who will be available to do so, to go through those and to try and resolve them in the intervening time that we do have, as well as completing the reading of the material. And I'd like to kick off that just so they've got some indication of it, and start off by proposing 10 o'clock on Friday of this week, so there's no delay. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Chair.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. I was aware that Councillor Brodie was likely to bring up a point of this nature because there were some emails exchanged earlier today, and I get his point very much. We have to remember that there are many other things going on in the council at the moment and in the education system, and as such I would be very happy to offer a delay of 1 week to next week. We already have a Corporate Scrutiny Committee and a Cabinet in the diary for next week. The problem with 2 weeks is that we will then adversely affect the primary admissions process. I can go to officers for more detail on that, but we are at the point at which letters are due to be sent out for all those due to join primary schools this coming September. And if we are put in a position where any decisions in this matter are delayed for another 2 weeks, I'm not sure how that process can happen or whether it can happen. So I'm more than happy, and I've had a brief chance to speak to the lead about this, to say we will put scrutiny and cabinet next week, but you will create a possibly insoluble problem for the primary admissions process to push it any further back.
Councillor Bacon, let's make this one thing really, really clear. We as corporate scrutiny haven't caused this problem. To have this, we didn't know how big these papers were. This sounds like a you problem rather than a me problem. There's 1,700 pages here that we were given 3 days to read. It is disrespectful to this committee to expect them to read it. It is disrespectful to the residents of the Isle of Wight to expect this committee to digest that information in that length of time. It also means just agreeing to a week's deferral, that it also affects all the other stuff that is on the agenda for next week as well. So it has a massive knock-on effect. But you cannot expect anybody. We didn't ask to have this amount of papers with only 3 days to read. You cannot expect proper scrutiny of all that amount of paperwork in that amount of time. So the proposal will stick as it is. And to be fair, you could have picked a phone up today and discussed that with me if you'd already seen the emails going backwards and forwards. So it still smacks of you wanted this to play out in a public way. I'm the most reasonable person going. Even my husband says so, which is really hard to go with. So I'm going to stick with the proposal that we've got on the table at the moment, that a 2-week delay, so we have a chance to read this paperwork and give it a proper scrutiny. You and your cabinet have a choice. Your choice is, do you go to Thursday and make the decision without scrutiny? That is your choice. All right?
And Chair, I would wholly accept not to go to Thursday, but I would say, and I'd probably ask officers to come in here because there's some important information they can assist you with, that it is, I think, best all round to defer for a week. I get the point, I absolutely get it, but we have to look at the practicalities, not just this process, the entirety of the primary admission system would be disrupted if there were a delay in any decision making, whatever those decisions are, for a 2-week period.
Do you know, I think in the great schemes of things, you know, a week or 2 weeks, we have to be able to digest this properly. I will ask the committee what they think, if it should be a week or 2 weeks, because it's, you know, I'm not Trump, I'm not a dictator, so I will pass it round to the committee.
I would ask that you hear from officers first.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Brody.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. I think I will say exactly what you've said in response to Councillor Bacon's remarks. My proposal is my proposal. That's what I intend to stick with. I think there's a major lesson to be learned here, probably far too late, that the way in which the Cabinet of this administration has worked over major decisions like this is not open or transparent. You could have shared the papers with us, Councillor Bacon, the way they were shared with the rest of the Cabinet some time ago. You chose not to. The Centre for Public Scrutiny makes a very clear recommendation that the way in which scrutiny engages with Cabinet engages with scrutiny, that good practice is early engagement, not last minute. That's bad practice. This is possibly, I mean, I'm no fan of scrutiny in Cabinet, as you know, but this is possibly the worst example I've come across in my time on this council of a last-minute engagement with corporate scrutiny. I'm going to shift on this. All I've heard from you is possibly, perhaps, not sure, cannot. You're supposed to be the outgoing portfolio member for Children's Services. Thankfully, outgoing by the sounds of it, if you're not sure about something that's within your remit as a member of the Cabinet. I stick with that. I hope the members of the committee will stick with that. Give yourself plenty of time to absorb the information that you were provided with. I have spent a long time on this council priding myself on understanding as much of everything that's put in front of me. I've sat here after 3 working days of the white papers, 5 working days of the purple papers, and I would say if I understand 10 to 20% of that, I don't understand, I've read it all and absorbed it all, I'd probably be exaggerating. It's going to take me at least another fortnight to go through that. And I don't think I'm one of the most stupid councillors, not that there are any stupid councillors, you know, but I am one of the, I like to think I'm one of the more capable members of this council. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lilly, Councillor Lever, Councillor Blake, Councillor Jarman, and then I will bring this to a close.
I support this, and I support that we stick to it because I think that this whole process has been fixated on a particular timescale to actually get this through. And I think to expect this to go through this the amount of detail is extremely unfair, and it's unfair to all the families and children and the teachers that are going through. And there is this council faced with legal challenges on a number of cases, whether it's from the trade unions or the diocese of that, and I think we need those 2 weeks to also take in that information of the legal challenges, and I feel we cannot do that in 1 week.
Thank you. Who do I say next? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I don't disagree with everything that's been said. My concern is what's been mentioned about the impacts on the process. I don't want to have an adverse effect of that just because we're miffed off about, and rightly so, about what's happened. I'd like to understand what the impact actually is of that process before I... Yeah.
But I think that comes down to a decision of Cabinet on Thursday. Are they brave enough to make that decision without having given us time to give proper scrutiny? So whatever the officers say, No, at the end of the day, we need a right amount of time to read these papers.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is, are they going to tighten their belts and go, okay, we're just going to do it without scrutiny? That's really the decision for the Cabinet, rather than us just delaying a week, because we have to give it enough time to digest those papers and the time which should be given to it. So that's Thursday night, is Cabinet's decision. Are they going to make one of the biggest decisions that's happened on the island for a long time without scrutiny? We will bring the officers in and get them to answer it, but that would be the thing with both Councillor Rose and myself. Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. So, I indexed my pile of 2,700 pages at 2 minutes a page. That's 90 hours of work. And I'm not averaging 2 minutes a page. It's taking me longer. I also, I'm not sure what the outcome will be at that meeting on Friday, when we start to go through the papers and look at the issues and errors that have already been identified, on the basis that there may be others, because I'm only part of the way through the papers. So it would be very difficult to judge that all of those matters could be addressed even in one meeting, because that will take some time, or that officers will be able to resolve those matters in such a short time period for us to meet again, even in a week. So I think 2 weeks is very reasonable. And I uphold the statement you made about in whose lap this particularly falls. I would also add one third issue here, is that I have it first-hand that school request for their paperwork was denied until 4 o'clock on Wednesday, when the papers were released as well. So the schools, and that includes all ancillary people related to that word, and perhaps the diocese, will also need time to review the papers relating to their individual school or schools, and to be able to reply perhaps to those matters by bringing further questions to this committee. Thank you.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. There is a lot of stuff in that report that is totally fresh to our eyes. There is a lot of stuff that, obviously, the last papers we had, which again I would have thought we'd have learned some lessons from previously, been given a week to go through another 4,500 pages worth of work there. That was obviously mainly consultations and dot maps and things like that. This has a lot more sort of numbers and tables and literature to it. So it's my view that we cannot perform an accurate scrutiny process within that time. Therefore, it's not really a question of whether we're happy to not do the scrutiny, and whether that decision goes on forward and has results of that. It's more, we can't do it. Therefore, is the Cabinet happy that that is the process that that part of the process has not happened, and are they happy then to carry on with the decision? So in my mind, I'm totally made up that Councillor Brody's motion is the only correct way to proceed.
Thank you. Mr Whittaker, I will bring you in, just reminding that it was not this committee that set these deadlines. So we should have been worked with along those timescales, and we also need to make sure that we've read the we need to make sure that we really have had time to digest this and be part of the process, or we will be completely out of the process. I'll hand you over to then I'm going to bring this to a close. I do have to say, members, that there will be, when you have voted on this, there will be a chance for members' questions. And I do know that Councillor Blake has a member's question. It is not related to school closures, but it will be a question that will probably have to be answered by Mr Whittaker, so I'm aware of that. So don't scarp her if we make the vote and you go bye. I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, members, for your comments. We really welcome the insights that corporate scrutiny bring to this complicated agenda item, as we have done throughout the whole process, dating well back into last year. So we absolutely welcome that, and as Councillor Bacon said, I think it's absolutely appropriate. There is more time allowed for you to read the papers. Just a note on the kind of practical reality of what's been going on, of course. The consultation period finished on the 3rd of February, and you can see we've had a very significant amount of feedback from people who care deeply about education on the Isle of Wight, and that is why there's so many papers. So it would have been very difficult. I accept absolutely, as Councillor Brodie said, that Cabinet did have access slightly for some of the papers early, but the reality is that the actual Cabinet paper wasn't ready until last Wednesday, which is why it came out last Wednesday. And it is true that there was a school who asked for their section to be released to them early, and they were told that they would be able to access it at the same time as everybody else. So that's absolutely true. We all come to work every day in the best interests of children, and we believe that the proposals in the report are in the best interests of Island children. They're very difficult decisions, they're very complicated, and you can see that the range of factors is enormous.
Well, we can't, because we haven't had time to read the papers.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So the thing I'm thinking about, and the reason I talk about children in this context about what's being discussed, is that I know from speaking to colleagues who work within the school system across the island, and indeed from speaking to children, is that they're really keen to find out what the council's decision is. And so, and I don't know what people in the public gallery would say, or others, but I think that the very considerable amount of anxiety which exists amongst our children and amongst our colleagues who work in schools, will continue the longer a decision is not taken. And we should remember, of course, that head teachers and schools chairs of governors have been writing to the council for many years, asking for the council to take decisive and significant action to address this need. And I would imagine that a deferral of any decision will cause some anxiety amongst people who care about education on the island, but because of that. Now, I absolutely accept that corporate scrutiny need the time to understand the information and ask questions, and we'd be delighted to speak with you at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, Councillor Jarman, and anyone else who wants to come along on that. In terms of the practical implications of it, if the decision was delayed for 2 weeks, it would not be possible to complete the primary school admissions round for September 2025. That would have very serious implications for children on the island. That is a fact as far as I'm aware.
Thank you. And I get that completely, which means having treated this committee without giving time to give proper scrutiny, then that is a Cabinet decision on Thursday if they want to make this decision without proper scrutiny. I will always take ownership of something when I, as chair of the committee, have done something wrong. But actually, you guys, everybody else, has to take ownership of the fact that we weren't given long enough to actually give this proper scrutiny.
Okay. Can I say two more things, please?
1.5.
1.5. So when we talked about the amount of time needed, if 1 week was enough, would an alternative be not to add it onto the agenda for next week, but to defer the agenda items for next week to the week after, and to put this agenda item on next time? The other thing I think that it might be also helpful for people to understand is that you'll be aware, because you've all received the correspondence, that there has been a pre-action letter sent to the Council relating to a potential judicial review about the process, and there's been lots of correspondence shared widely about the referral of the whole process to the school's adjudicator. I would only mention that because obviously there's these other, and of course this is not a substitute for corporate scrutiny, it is a factor in terms of the other things that are going on and the other scrutiny that is happening from other people, although that's absolutely not the same as corporate scrutiny. Any delays in that could also impact the speed with which those matters can be referred to, for example, the school's adjudicator. And that is also an additional complicated factor which may be mitigated partly if it was possible to take any decisions next week.
I feel a bit like Catherine Tate at the moment with that face that says, does this face look bothered? Because I think the bit that everybody is missing is This committee should have been given the time, with everything that you are saying now, to actually have been able to make a decision. I am not going to feel guilty about asking this committee to vote on this, because it was not us that set these deadlines. It was us that was presented with no time to give proper scrutiny. So I am going to move to the vote, and then just remind we do have a member's question. So can we move to the vote, please, to defer for 2 weeks? If there is something that comes up and Councillor Brodie and I are happy that it could be deferred for just a week, then we will come back and send that round to you all. But the agenda has already been released for next meeting of this committee. Can we move to the vote, please? Thank you. That proposal is passed. So there will be no discussion on this evening. We will come back in 2 weeks to discuss this, having given it the time that it serves. Can I just pass over to Councillor Blake for his question, for members' question, and then any other members' question, then I'll bring this meeting to a close.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the idea to give an answer here and now, and I'm going to direct this, I think, at Councillor Bacon in the best way, and he might defer to an officer. It was reported in the press this week that there is a resident, Iowa resident that is, I'm not sure where I'm assuming it's a child, is receiving a taxi to education establishment in Birmingham at the cost of £400 to the council. There was no details given, obviously, in the reply to the press. I just wondered if a reasoning that would be available for that, or the surrounding circumstances on that issue, because I've had lawyers come to me and wanting some form of a justification, and we don't know questions to that effect.
I will defer to officers, but the situation is sometimes there are very specialised facilities and requirements that young people and indeed adults have that simply cannot be provided on this island. And the council has statutory duties to provide necessary support and provision in such cases, and it must bear the brunt of the expense of providing that, so that the persons in question receive the support and help they need. But I can hand over to see if there's any further information that can be given, although I appreciate some of it will be personal and not for this committee.
So, thank you, Councillor Bacon. So I won't comment at all on the particular situation. The point is that on the island we have a very significant growth in the number of children who have special education needs and disabilities. We do not have enough specialist places on the island to meet their needs. As a result of that, a significant number of children have to go to the mainland in order to have their needs to be met. In the island's education strategy, which will be going to Cabinet in April, there's 5 priorities within that. One of them is about expanding special educational needs and disabilities provision on the island. And a subsection of that is expanding the number of specialist education places we have on the island. Because the thing is, if you're a child and your needs cannot be met on the island, you often, in order to have your needs met, have to travel a very long way. And very often, you have to travel so far that you can't travel there and back in a day, so you have to go to a residential facility and you have to be away from your family. The conversations that I've had with families on the island are universally that they would like their children to be able to go to school locally to where they live, within their community, in exactly the same way as their peers and friends without special education needs and disabilities can do so. And so until we reach that position, until we take the steps we need to take to improve education on the island, there will be children travelling every single day across the Solent to the mainland to go to school, and some of them will be staying there for the week or even longer than that. Not only is that not in their best interest, it's not what they want, it's very expensive. That is why in April, Cabinet will be considering the island's new education strategy, which outlines the steps that we will take to improve education standards on the island. That will include expanding local specialist provision, and that will mean that children in the future will not have to go to the mainland to have their needs met, and indeed it may also mean that we'll be able to bring back children who are currently on the mainland so that they can go to school within their own community alongside their friends. But until we take those steps, we will not be able to do that, and children will have to carry on going to the mainland, and it will carry on costing the council a lot more money than it needs to.
Thank you for the comprehensive reply. And we have a few more minutes just to members' question. Councillor John.
First of all, it's very nice to hear echoed back the budget amendment that we put through, I believe, last February for a provision on the island coming back to us. But I would ask, just in advance and to give the officers a little bit of opportunity, could I ask, this is a question for the committee, which members believe they might be able to attend the meeting at 10 o'clock on Friday of this week, as we've got an indication of numbers.
I cannot make 10 o'clock. I'd also advise that actually it's made by 10 past 10 o'clock, because I believe the International Women's Day flag raising is at 10 o'clock.
I'm happy to defer for the flag raising. I was planning to myself. Well, I think I'll press ahead with that. It may mean that we need a further session as well. But I think the progress we needs to be made, and we need to get on with it. Thank you.
Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Chair. You heard what Mr Whittaker said about the situation with the primary admissions process, and without going back over your response to that point, can I ask this? If the Cabinet were to defer its decision-making on school-based planning to the 13th, as in next Thursday, which would still, whatever decisions made, allow the place planning, the primary admissions process to continue, do I understand you as saying that scrutiny would refuse to consider the scrutiny of these papers at the opportunity it has on Tuesday the 11th, prior to that meeting?
So what I said is the agenda has already been released for next week's meeting, so we can have a discussion afterwards and send some proposals to Councillor Brady, but I can't see how that will be happening. We did actually check before we came to this meeting that this could be deferred to the 20th. So we had already checked.
I understand it can be added to the agenda without any issue, hence what I said earlier.
Okay, I think the vote has already happened, so that's Councillor Lilly.
My question came out of the particular point of what Mr Whittaker said about putting forward the strategy in April to the Cabinet. I am worried about this interim period from the Cabinet to the going into the committee system. That there seems to be a steamroller of trying to get the Cabinet making decisions, which suddenly the committee is going to have to pick up. My question is can we actually look at this? And because I actually think we should be now, especially when you get into April, be moving any particular long-term decision-making into the committee system. I'm really worried that that the Cabinet are trying to put all their hands up, all 7 or 8 hands, very quickly in the last few weeks. It seems very desperate and also very wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. That's noted, and I'm sure the Cabinet will take that on board. However, I will say, having been a Cabinet member, and I was one of the people that really pushed for a committee system because I believe in democracy, and actually the Cabinet system is too few people making such big decisions for the whole of the island, and it doesn't include the whole of the council. However, most strategies are written by officers. I don't think Councillor Bacon sat up every night by candlelight writing the strategy to go forward. So I think anything that comes before this committee before May, actually we should give it the time that it needs to be read, because if it's a strategy, it will be written by officers. We are all quite capable, having made a point this evening, if we're given the time to read things, we can give it our opinion on whether it's a good strategy. So if it comes before this committee, whether it is April or becomes a committee system in May, we do need to take ownership of these strategies. They are really important. There is nothing any different to being a school governor, and you will be constantly having policies and strategies that you need and you read and you look at. They're not just written by one person every night writing those strategies. So I personally am not concerned about that. I think there is stuff that has to be got through, and we have to give the officers the respect of giving the time that is needed, like we need to give you all the respect to be able to read your papers that you give us. I need to hop. Thank you, and if everybody's happy. Because I quite like him and we actually get on all right, I'll let Councillor Jordan ask his question. No? Not going to ask it. Is everybody happy if we draw this meeting to a close? Yep, thank you. Good night. Have a safe journey home.